Oprah stood tall on the hot tarmac, her eyes fixed on the sleek private jet parked in front of her. The sun was shining brightly, but she hardly noticed it. Her sharp heels tapped impatiently on the concrete as she waited for news. The jet was supposed to be ready for a flight to New York by noon, but it had broken down just hours before takeoff. The investors were waiting, and delays like this could ruin everything. She crossed her arms and sighed. How hard can it be to fix a machine? She muttered to herself. This is the biggest jet in my fleet, and it's supposed to be perfect. The engineers had been working on the problem since early morning. Some of them were scratching their heads. Others were looking worried. They talked quietly among themselves, but no one seemed confident. The jet's engine wouldn't start, and the computer systems were acting strange. It was the kind of problem that could cause a huge loss for Oprah's company. Oprah was the CEO of the airline company that owned the jet. She was a strong woman, used to making big decisions and solving problems quickly. But this time even she was losing patience. Just then a young man walked up. He was wearing blue overalls stained with oil and grease. His hands were rough and strong, showing signs of hard work. His face was calm but serious. His name was Martin. Martin was a mechanic, one of the best, but not the kind of person Oprah usually noticed. He wasn't in a fancy suit or a business meeting. He worked with his hands, fixing engines and machines every day. When Oprah saw him approach, she raised an eyebrow. You? She said loudly, enough for others to hear. They sent you to fix the biggest jet in my fleet? The engineers around them chuckled softly. Martin didn't answer. He just walked closer to the jet. Oprah smiled with a little challenge in her eyes. Listen, Martin, she said clearly. If you can fix this jet today, I'll marry you. The words hung in the air. Everyone stopped and stared. It was meant as a joke, a sarcastic way to push him. But it was also a test, and could Martin really fix the jet when no one else could? Martin looked up at Oprah without any anger or shame. Instead, he smiled gently and said, A challenge from a woman like you. How can I refuse? With that, he bent down and started to examine the jet. His hands moved carefully, feeling the metal and wires. He opened panels, checked the engines, and listened closely to the sounds. Martin knew that machines didn't lie. They didn't judge people by their clothes or their race. They spoke in a language of clicks, hums, and pressure. The engineers watched Martin work. Some were doubtful, some curious. Oprah leaned against a nearby wall and sipped her coffee, trying not to show how interested she was. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, then started to set. The heat made the air shimmer above the tarmac. Martin was still working. His clothes were dirty, his hands covered in grease. But he didn't stop. Sometimes he would wipe sweat from his forehead and take a deep breath. Sometimes he would talk softly to himself, guessing what was wrong with the jet. The others gave up long ago, but Martin was not like them. Inside the jet, the problem was more complicated than it seemed. The engine was not just broken. The fuel system had a strange error. The computer that controlled the jet's functions was not responding. It was like the jet had lost its heart. Martin worked carefully, following each wire and bolt. He knew this was not just about fixing a machine. It was about proving something to Oprah, to the engineers, but most of all to himself. Outside, Oprah watched. Her challenge was a joke, but now it didn't feel like one. She felt a strange respect for the man who refused to give up. Maybe he can do it, she thought quietly. Finally, after hours of work, Martin climbed out from under the jet. He was tired, but there was a quiet smile on his face. It's done, he said simply. Oprah stood up straight. What do you mean it's done? She asked. Martin looked at her calmly. I fixed the jet. The problem was a misaligned fuel valve and a software lock in the system. I rewired the regulator and reset the controls manually. The head engineer came forward to check. He looked surprised. Then he turned the key and the engine roared to life. The lights on the control panel blinked green. The jet was ready. The hangar erupted with applause. People smiled and cheered, but Oprah didn't smile. She stared at Martin, feeling a mix of emotions, surprise, respect, and something else she couldn't explain. Her joke had become a promise, and now she had to decide what that meant. The moment Martin said, "It's done," and the jet came back to life, the hangar was filled with cheers and claps. But Oprah stood quietly, her arms crossed, watching him with a strange look on her face. She had made the joke, but now the joke was real. The man she had challenged had fixed her most expensive and important jet. That was not something she expected. Martin wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked around. The engineers were shaking their heads in disbelief. Some whispered to each other, "He actually did it," or "How did he manage this?" Tom, Oprah's assistant, came forward and said, "This is amazing. Nobody else could fix it, and Martin just did it like it was easy." Martin smiled a little. He wasn't used to praise like this, but it felt good. Still, he remained humble. "It wasn't easy," he said quietly. "I just didn't give up." Oprah's smile was small but genuine. Still, inside she was conflicted. She had thrown out words she didn't expect to become true. Now she had to figure out what to do next. "Martin," Oprah said, stepping closer, "you fixed the jet and you kept your promise. But this isn't just about fixing a machine, is it?" Martin looked up at her. "No," he said. "It's about trust. About believing in yourself when others don't." Oprah nodded slowly. "You know, people are watching us right now. They heard what I said, and I'm sure they are waiting to see what happens next." Martin's eyes met hers without hesitation. "Then let them watch." The two stood in silence for a moment. The jet hummed quietly behind them, a symbol of their strange, unexpected challenge. The quiet strength of Martin didn't come from a place of power. He wasn't born into money or privilege. He grew up in a small neighborhood, where life was often hard and opportunities were rare. But he loved machines. From the time he was a boy, he took apart radios, bikes, anything with gears or wires, and put them back together. When he started working as a mechanic, he was determined to learn everything. He didn't care if others doubted him because of how he looked or where he came from. His skill and dedication spoke louder than words. But working on a private jet like this, that was different. It was a chance to show everyone that talent isn't about where you start. It's about how hard you work. Oprah watched him quietly as he packed his tools. She saw something in him she hadn't seen in many people before. Patience, humility, and strength. Tom leaned toward Oprah and whispered, "You know, she made that promise half joking, but now she has to think seriously about it." Oprah smiled but didn't answer. Instead, she said to Martin, "Why don't you take a break? You must be exhausted." Martin shook his head. "I'll rest later, but there's something else I want to check." Oprah raised an eyebrow. "What?" Martin pointed at the control panel inside the jet. "Sometimes it's not just about fixing the obvious. You have to look deeper, at the small parts others miss." The engineers nodded in agreement. Martin was not only fixing the jet, he was teaching them a lesson. Meanwhile, news about the broken jet and Martin's success began to spread through the company. Employees talked in the hallways and cafeterias. Some were surprised, others inspired. Many had never seen a mechanic stand so calmly in front of a CEO and fix what seemed impossible. But not all the talk was kind. Some people whispered that Oprah's promise was just a joke, and that Martin shouldn't take it seriously. Others said the whole thing was just a publicity stunt. Martin heard some of the comments but didn't let them bother him. He knew the truth. He had worked hard, and that was enough. Oprah, however, felt the pressure. Her phone buzzed nonstop with calls from reporters and employees asking about the promise. Should she keep it? Was it even fair? That evening, as the sun set over the city, Oprah sat alone in her office thinking deeply. She wasn't used to being unsure. She thought about Martin, about his quiet confidence, the way he had looked her in the eyes, the calm way he had handled the impossible. Maybe, she thought, there's more to this man than I first thought. A walk that changed everything. The next morning, Oprah invited Martin to take a walk with her around the airfield. It was a small gesture, but one full of meaning. As they walked side by side, Oprah broke the silence. "Martin, I want to understand you better," she said, "not just as a mechanic, but as a person." Martin smiled. "I'm just a man who loves what he does." "But there's more," Oprah said. "You didn't give up when others did. You believed in yourself even when people doubted you." Martin looked at her and said, "Everyone has that inside them. Sometimes we just need a reason to keep going." Oprah thought about her own life. She had built her company from nothing. She had faced many challenges, but sometimes she felt alone at the top. "Maybe I've been too proud," she admitted. Martin nodded. "Pride can be a shield, but it can also be a prison." The two continued walking, their steps slowing as the sun climbed higher. After their walk, Oprah surprised Martin with an invitation. "I want to take you out to dinner tonight," she said. Martin blinked, surprised. Dinner? Yes, Oprah said, smiling. Not as CEO and mechanic. Just two people sharing a meal. Martin hesitated. He was not used to this kind of attention, but he accepted. That sounds good, he said, as they shook hands. Oprah felt a new respect for Martin, and a spark of something else she hadn't felt in a long time. Back at the hangar, the jet was ready for the next flight, thanks to Martin. The crew prepared it carefully. Oprah stood nearby, watching the team move with energy and purpose. Tom came up to her. You really think you'll keep your promise? Oprah smiled softly. I don't know. But I do know one thing. Martin earned my respect. And that's worth more than words, Tom nodded. Sometimes respect is the first step to something bigger. Oprah agreed, but she kept her thoughts private. There was a story unfolding here, one about trust, honesty, and breaking down walls. Martin returned to his workbench, cleaning his tools. The jet had tested his skills and his patience, but it also showed him that people's words carry weight, even jokes. As he wiped his hands, Martin thought about the road ahead. Fixing the jet was just the beginning. Now, he had to fix something else, the walls between himself and Oprah. That evening, Martin arrived at the restaurant Oprah had chosen. It was a quiet place away from the noise and stress of the city. The lights were soft and the air smelled like fresh flowers. Oprah was already there, waiting at a small table near the window. She smiled warmly when she saw him. Thank you for coming, Martin returned the smile. Thank you for inviting me. They talked about simple things, their favorite foods, music, and childhood memories. Slowly, the barriers between CEO and mechanic began to fall. Oprah told Martin about her struggles to lead a company. Martin shared stories of his first days as a mechanic, the mistakes he made and the lessons he learned. Neither talked about the promise or the jet. They just enjoyed the moment. As the night grew darker, Oprah looked at Martin and said, You know, you fixed more than just the jet. Martin smiled. And you made me believe that maybe, just maybe, promises are worth keeping. The morning after their dinner, Oprah and Martin both felt a strange calmness, a quiet understanding that something had shifted between them. They were no longer just CEO and mechanic. Something deeper was beginning, but neither was ready to say it out loud. Oprah called Martin to her office. It was a large room, filled with sunlight pouring through the tall windows. The walls were decorated with pictures of airplanes, awards, and past successes of the company. Martin entered, feeling nervous but determined. This was a place he rarely visited, a world very different from the hangar where he worked. Oprah motioned him to sit on a chair in front of her desk. Martin, she began, I've been thinking a lot about what happened yesterday. You fixed the jet against all odds and you kept me honest. Martin nodded quietly. But, Oprah continued, there's more to this. I want to know what drives you. What makes you so determined, so patient? Martin thought for a moment, then spoke softly. I grew up in a neighborhood where many people didn't believe in themselves. I learned early that skill and hard work can change a person's life. He looked at Oprah. But it's not just about fixing machines. It's about fixing what's broken inside. Oprah was silent for a moment. What do you mean? Martin smiled gently. Sometimes people carry invisible weights. Doubts, fears, past mistakes. Machines don't have those. But people do. Oprah remembered her own journey. The tough decisions, the sacrifices, the moments when she doubted if she could carry on. She looked at Martin and realized how much courage it took to admit weaknesses. She said, I've built walls around myself to stay strong, but maybe those walls have kept me from seeing the truth. Martin leaned forward. We all have walls. The question is, who will help us break them down? The conversation continued for hours. They talked about family, dreams, and the future. Oprah learned about Martin's father, who taught him to never give up. Martin learned about Oprah's early failures and how she fought to prove herself in a man's world. After their talk, Oprah walked Martin back to the hangar. The two shared a quiet moment near the jet, now ready for its next flight. I respect you, Martin, Oprah said sincerely. More than I ever thought possible. Martin smiled. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. As Martin returned to his workbench, Oprah felt a warmth she had not felt in a long time. The promise she made was no longer just a joke or a challenge. It was becoming something real, but not everyone was happy. Rumors started to spread in the company. Some people whispered that Oprah was losing control. that she was letting a mechanic into her world in ways they didn't understand. Tom, Oprah's assistant, warned her, "People are talking. Some say you should stay professional. Mixing business and personal life can be dangerous." Oprah shook her head. "I'm not interested in what others think. This is about trust and respect, and maybe something more." Still, the pressure was real. Oprah knew she had to be careful. The world was watching. Martin's world. Meanwhile, Martin's life outside work was simple but meaningful. He lived in a small apartment filled with old tools and books about machines. He spent his evenings listening to jazz and dreaming of a future beyond the hangar. One evening, as Martin cleaned his tools, his phone rang. It was his mother. "How's work, Martin?" she asked warmly. "The jet is fixed," he replied with a small laugh, "and I'm invited to dinner by the CEO." There was silence on the other end. "Martin, be careful," she said gently. "You deserve respect, but don't forget who you are." Martin smiled. "I won't forget. I'm just trying to be the best me." Back at the company, Oprah made a decision. She invited Martin to join her at the next board meeting, not as a mechanic, but as a guest to share his experience. When Martin entered the room full of executives, all eyes turned to him. He stood tall, calm, and confident. Oprah introduced him proudly. "This is Martin, the man who fixed the jet when everyone else gave up." His story is a reminder that talent and hard work can come from anywhere. The board members nodded. Some impressed, some surprised. Martin spoke briefly about his work, his values, and his belief in honesty and respect. His words were simple but powerful. After the meeting, several executives came up to shake his hand. The next weeks were different. Martin's place in the company grew beyond the hangar. Oprah supported him, trusting his skill and integrity. At the same time, their relationship deepened. They met for coffee, talked about life, and laughed together. The walls between them continued to fall, but they both knew the road ahead would not be easy. There were still challenges, doubts from others, fears within themselves. One afternoon, Martin found a letter on his workbench. It was from Oprah. It read, "Martin, you've shown me what true strength means. I want to keep learning from you, and I want you to keep being you. Let's face the future together, one step at a time." Martin smiled, his heart full. He folded the letter carefully and put it in his pocket. Hope on the horizon of the sun set over the city. Martin stood on the rooftop of the company building. He looked out at the skyline, feeling hope for the first time in a long time. He thought about the jet, Oprah, and the promise that started it all. What had begun as a joke was now a journey of respect, trust, and something more. He whispered softly to the night, "I'm ready." The days following the board meeting were filled with new energy. Oprah and Martin found themselves moving through the company's world in ways neither had expected. What began with a broken jet and a bold promise was now becoming a story of change, not just for the company, but for their lives. One bright morning, Martin arrived at the hangar earlier than usual. The sun was still low, casting long shadows across the airplanes parked on the tarmac. The air smelled of fresh fuel and warm metal. It was a place where Martin felt most at home. He opened his toolbox and began preparing for the day's work. But before he could start, Oprah appeared beside him, dressed in a simple blouse and pants. She looked different outside the boardroom, a little softer, more relaxed. "Good morning, Martin," she said, smiling. Martin looked up, surprised but happy to see her. "Morning, Ms. Oprah." Oprah laughed softly. "Please call me Oprah." Martin smiled. "Okay, Oprah." They stood side by side, looking at the rows of planes. Oprah seemed thoughtful. "You've changed things here. Not just fixing machines, but the way people think." Martin shrugged. "Maybe they needed to see that talent isn't about where you come from." Oprah nodded. "And that sometimes a broken machine can fix more than just itself." Building bridges that day, Oprah and Martin worked together with the maintenance team. Oprah asked questions, learned about the work, and even tried to help. It was an unusual sight for the employees, seeing the CEO rolling up her sleeves alongside the mechanics. One of the younger mechanics, Daniel, watched carefully. He had joined the company only a few months before and was still learning the ropes. He felt inspired by Martin's skill and Oprah's willingness to learn. During lunch, Daniel approached Martin. "How did you get so good at this?" he asked. Martin smiled. "By loving what I do and never giving up." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. I want to be like you. Martin patted him on the shoulder. You will be. Just keep working hard. Oprah joined their conversation. And remember, she said, it's not about where you start. It's about where you want to go. Facing doubts, but change never comes without challenges. That afternoon, Oprah received a call from a longtime board member named Mr. Benson. He was an old-fashioned man, set in his ways. Oprah, he said sternly, I'm concerned about this new direction. Inviting a mechanic to the board meeting, mixing personal and business. Are you sure this is wise? Oprah took a deep breath. Mr. Benson, Martin has earned his place. His skills and honesty bring value to the company. Benson grunted. Just be careful. The company's reputation is at stake. After hanging up, Oprah felt the weight of responsibility. She knew she had to balance progress with caution. Martin's quiet strength back in the hangar. Martin sensed the tension. He didn't want Oprah to feel alone in this. He approached her later that day. Oprah, he said gently, you're not the only one facing doubts. I hear them too. Oprah smiled softly. But you don't let them stop you. Martin shook his head. I can't, not when I've come this far. Oprah looked at him with new admiration. You're stronger than I thought. Martin laughed quietly. And you're braver than you believe. One afternoon, Martin was surprised to see his mother arrive at the hangar. She was a kind woman with wise eyes and a warm smile. Martin, she said, embracing him, I wanted to see where you work. Martin introduced her to Oprah, who welcomed her warmly. Over coffee, Martin's mother shared stories of their family's struggles and hopes. You've made us proud, she told Martin. Keep believing in yourself. Oprah listened quietly. She felt honored to meet the woman who raised the man who fixed her jet and her heart. Over the next few weeks, Oprah and Martin's partnership grew stronger. They started a new program within the company to train young mechanics, encouraging talent from all backgrounds. One morning, Oprah announced the program at a company meeting. This is about more than fixing planes, she told the crowd. It's about opening doors for those who work hard and believe in themselves. The room erupted with applause. Martin watched from the side, feeling proud and hopeful. Moments of reflection. Late one evening, Oprah sat in her office looking out at the city lights. The promise she made to Martin was no longer just words. It was a symbol of trust, respect, and the possibility of something new. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Martin. Thank you for believing in me. She smiled and typed back, thank you for showing me what's possible. The company planned a celebration for the successful repair of the jet and the new training program. It was an evening filled with laughter, music, and hope. During the party, Oprah and Martin found themselves alone on the dance floor. The music was soft and the world around them seemed to fade. They danced slowly, their eyes meeting with understanding. Neither said much, but their hearts spoke volumes. In that moment, they weren't CEO and mechanic. They were two people learning to trust each other. As the night ended, Oprah whispered, Martin, this journey is just beginning. Martin nodded. And I'm ready to walk it with you. They walked outside, hand in hand, under the stars, ready to face whatever came next. Together. The days following the company celebration were filled with promise and possibility. Oprah and Martin had begun to build something new, not just in the company, but in their lives. However, as often happens, every bright sky eventually faces a storm. It started slowly. Quiet whispers in the hallways, curious glances and raised eyebrows. Not everyone was happy about the closeness between Oprah, the powerful CEO, and Martin, the mechanic from the hangar. Some employees wondered if Oprah's decision to trust Martin so openly was a mistake. Others believed Martin didn't belong in the circles of leadership. The gossip spread like wildfire. One afternoon, Oprah overheard a group of executives in the lounge. Isn't it risky to mix personal feelings with business? One said. Absolutely, another agreed. What if this affects the company's image? Oprah sighed but remained calm. She knew she couldn't control what people said. Instead, she focused on what she believed was right. Martin's quiet resolve. Martin noticed the change too. He heard the comments, felt the stares, but never let them break his spirit. One evening, as he closed the hangar, Daniel, the young mechanic inspired by Martin, approached him. Martin, Daniel said quietly, some people don't believe you belong here. Martin smiled kindly. Sometimes people fear what they don't understand. Daniel looked puzzled. Martin continued, but if you work hard, Stay honest and believe in yourself. You can change their minds. Daniel nodded. I want to be like you. Martin placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. And you will be. Oprah faced her own challenges. The board called an emergency meeting to discuss her leadership and the growing partnership with Martin. Mr. Benson was there, along with other senior members. Oprah, Mr. Benson said firmly, we respect your vision, but there are concerns. Mixing personal and professional relationships can harm the company. Oprah stood tall. Martin has earned my trust through his skills and character. This company is built on merit, not titles. A heated discussion followed, but Oprah's determination was clear. In the end, the board agreed to give the partnership a chance. But with caution, after the meeting, Oprah felt exhausted. She confided in Martin during their usual evening walk. I wonder if I'm making the right choice, she admitted. The pressure is heavy. Martin took her hand gently. You're strong, Oprah. Remember why you started this journey? She smiled softly. I started it to build something better. For the company and for myself. Martin nodded. And you're doing just that. One morning, Martin received a letter. It was an invitation to attend a national conference on aviation technology, a prestigious event usually reserved for top engineers and industry leaders. Martin was surprised and nervous. He wasn't used to such attention, Oprah called him. You deserve this, Martin. It's time to show the world what you can do. Martin agreed to attend, feeling both excited and anxious. Preparing for the conference, in the days before the event, Oprah helped Martin prepare. They reviewed presentations, practiced speeches, and discussed how to handle questions. Martin was grateful for Oprah's support. I never imagined I'd stand in front of so many people, he said. Oprah smiled. You have a story that inspires. People want to hear it. The day of the conference arrived. Martin stepped onto the stage, heart pounding but face calm. He spoke about his journey, from a small neighborhood to fixing one of the most advanced jets in the world. He shared lessons about perseverance, humility, and believing in oneself. The audience listened intently, moved by his honesty and passion. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Oprah watched proudly from the front row, tears in her eyes. After the conference, Martin's life changed. He was offered new opportunities to work on advanced projects and share his knowledge. But despite the attention, Martin remained humble. He continued to work in the hangar, teaching young mechanics and fixing planes with the same dedication. Oprah and Martin's relationship grew stronger too. They supported each other through challenges and celebrated successes together. Back at the company, the rumors and doubts began to fade. People saw the positive changes Martin brought and respected the partnership with Oprah. The training program expanded, giving more young people chances to learn and grow. Oprah and Martin stood side by side, ready to face whatever the future held. The journey that began with a broken jet and a bold promise had reached a turning point. Oprah and Martin had faced challenges, doubts, and storms. Now they were ready to build a future together, not just for themselves, but for everyone who believed in hard work, respect, and hope. It was early spring when Oprah invited Martin to her office for an important conversation. The sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the room filled with pictures of achievements and memories. Martin, Oprah began, her voice steady. We've come a long way since that night at the hangar. I want to thank you for everything, your skill, your honesty, your courage. Martin smiled softly. Thank you for believing in me. Oprah took a deep breath. There's something I want to ask you. Martin's heart beat faster. I want us to be partners, not just in business, but in life. Will you marry me? Martin was stunned. The words were more than he had dreamed. He looked into Oprah's eyes and saw the same hope and trust reflected there. Yes, he said simply, I will. Planning together, the days that followed were filled with joy and excitement. Oprah and Martin planned their future with care and love. They talked about their dreams, the family they wanted to build, and the company they wanted to grow together. Their love was no longer just a promise. It was real, strong, and deep. Not everyone was ready for their union. Some still questioned how a CEO and a mechanic could find love. But Oprah and Martin paid no attention to the noise. They knew their love was based on respect and truth, not on titles or appearances. At the wedding ceremony, held in a beautiful garden filled with friends, family, and colleagues, Oprah and Martin exchanged vows that reflected their journey. "I promise to trust you, respect you, and stand by your side," Oprah said. Martin replied, "I promise to love you, support you, and be your partner in every step." The crowd cheered, moved by the honesty and warmth between them. Together, Oprah and Martin led the company to new heights. The training program they started became a beacon of hope for young people from all backgrounds. They created scholarships, mentorships, and opportunities that changed lives. Their story inspired others to believe in themselves and never give up. The power of humility. Despite their success, Oprah and Martin remained humble. They never forgot where they came from or the lessons they learned. Martin continued to work in the hangar, teaching young mechanics with patience and care. Oprah stayed involved with the daily life of the company, listening and learning. Their leadership was not about power, but about service. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Oprah and Martin sat on their porch holding hands. "Do you remember the promise?" Oprah asked softly. Martin smiled. "How could I forget?" They looked at the sky, feeling grateful for the journey, the challenges, the growth, and the love. "We made it," Oprah said. "Yes," Martin agreed. Together, their story was no longer just about a jet or a promise made in jest. It was about breaking barriers, building trust, and creating a future filled with hope and possibilities. Oprah and Martin showed the world that true strength comes from kindness, respect, and believing in each other.